Hi, friends! We are going to continue reading our Nancy Drew book, The Secret of the Old Clock by Carolyn Keene. Okay, so today's chapter is called Strange Instructions. So let's get started. For the next few seconds, Nancy's mind worked like lightning as she rehearsed what she would say to Officer Cohen. One idea stood out clearly. The police were concerned in the theft of the furniture, so she would hand over the clock, but they were not involved in locating Mr. Crowley's missing will. For this reason, the young sleuth felt justified in keeping the notebook. She would turn it over to her father and let him decide what disposition she would be made of it. After all, Nancy told herself, Dad is handling the Crowley case for the Hoovers and even the Turners and Mrs. Rowan in a way. By this time, she and the trooper had reached her car. Would you like me to drive? He asked. Why, yes, if you wish, Nancy replied. But first I want to show you something, she added. As he opened the door for her, I have some stolen property here. What? Quickly, Nancy explained that she had taken the responsibility of trying to learn whether or not the van held the stolen furniture. I recognized a few of the pieces and possibly this old clock, which the Tophams had told me about. I took that out to examine it, then I never had a chance to get it back without being caught. I'm sure the Tophams will identify the old clock as their property. Nancy's explanation seemed to satisfy the officer. I'll take it to headquarters, he said. Let's go. He laid the clock on the rear seat and then slid behind the wheel and drove off. It was nearly midnight when Nancy, tired and worn from her long ride, reached the Drew home in River Heights. As she drove into a double garage, she noticed that her father's car was gone. A glance at the house disclosed that the windows were dark, with the exception of a light in the hall. Hannah Graham must be in bed. Of course, she's not expecting me, Nancy reasoned. I wonder where Dad can be. Oh, I hope he'll get home soon. I want to tell him about my discovery right away. After locking the garage door, she went to the kitchen entrance and let herself in. Her eyes lighted on the refrigerator, and suddenly Nancy realized she was very hungry. Many hours had passed since she'd eaten. Food, she thought. Just as Nancy opened the refrigerator door, she heard steps on the stairs, and Hannah Gruen, wearing a sleepy look, appeared in a robe and slippers. Nancy, cried the housekeeper, instantly wide awake. Surprise, Hannah, darling. Nancy gave the housekeeper an affectionate hug and kiss. I'm simply starved. Haven't had a bite since lunch. Why, you poor dear, the housekeeper exclaimed in concern. What happened? I'll fix you something right away. As the two prepared a chicken sandwich, some cocoa, and Hannah got a large piece of cinnamon cake over which she poured hot applesauce, Nancy told of her adventures. The housekeeper's eyes widened. Nancy, you might have been killed by those awful men. Well, I'm certainly glad that they've been captured. So am I, declared Nancy vibrantly. As she finished the last crumb of cake, and I hope the Turners get their silver heirlooms. How about the Tophams? Hannah Gruen questioned teasingly. Somehow, said Nancy with a wink, that doesn't seem to worry me. Then she asked, where's Dad? Honey, sit down so I can read to your friends. Working in his office, Hannah Gruen replied. He phoned earlier that something unexpected had come up in connection with one of the cases. Then I'll wait for him, said Nancy. You go back to bed, and thanks a million, the sleepy housekeeper did not demur. Left alone, Nancy tidied the kitchen, then went to the living room. Now to find out what became of Josiah Crowley's last will. She thought excitedly as she curled up into a comfortable chair near a reading lamp. Carefully, she thumbed the yellow pages, for she was afraid they might tear. Evidently, Josiah Crowley had used the notebook for many years. He certainly knew how to save money, she mused. Nancy read page after page, pursuing various kinds of memoranda and many notations of property owned by Mr. Crowley. There were also figures on numerous business transactions and what had been involved. Nancy was surprised at the long list of stocks, bonds, and notes, which apparently belonged to the estate. I had no idea Josiah Crowley was worth so much, she murmured. After a time, Nancy grew impatient at the seemingly endless list of figures. She skipped several pages of the notebook and turned toward the end where Mr. Crowley had listed his possessions. Why, what's this, she asked herself. Fastened on one page was a very thin, flat key with a tag marked 148. Suddenly, a phrase on the opposite page, "My last will and testament," caught and held Nancy's attention. Eagerly, she began to read the whole section. "I found it," she exclaimed excitedly. "I'm glad I didn't give up on the research." The notation concerning the will was brief. Nancy assumed the cramped writing was Josiah Crowley's. It read, "To whom it may concern, my last will and testament will be found in safe deposit box number 148 in the Merchants Trust Company. The box is under the name of Josiah Johnston. And this is the key to the box," Nancy told herself. For several moments, the young sloth sat staring ahead of her. It seemed unbelievable that she had solved the mystery, but surely there could be no mistake. The date of the entry in the notebook was recent, and the ink had not faded, as it had on earlier pages. "There is a later will," Nancy exclaimed aloud. "Oh, if only it leaves something to the Turners and the Matthews and Abby Rowan and the Hoover girls. Then Allison could take voice lessons, and little Judy would be taken care of." And Nancy hurriedly read on, hoping to learn something definite. But also she carefully examined every page in the book. There was no other mention of the will, nor any clue to the contents. No wonder the document didn't come to light, Nancy mused. Who would have thought of looking for it in a safe deposit box under the name of Josiah Johnston? In his desire for safekeeping, Josiah Crowley nearly defeated his own purpose. Her thoughts were interrupted as she heard a car turn into the driveway. Rushing to the window, Nancy saw her father pull in the garage. She ran to meet him at the kitchen door. "Why, hello, Nancy," he greeted her in surprise. "If I had known you were here, I'd have come home sooner. I was doing some special work on a case. Back from Moon Lake ahead of schedule, aren't you?" "Yes," Nancy admitted, trying to hide her excitement, but for a good reason. Before her father could hang up his hat on the hall closet, she plunged into the story of her adventures and ended by showing him the notebook, which she had found inside the mantel clock. When she had finished, Carson Drew stared at his daughter with a mingled pride and amazement. "You're a good detective, Nancy. You've picked up an excellent clue," he said. "Dad, I thought it best not tell the police about the notebook. We don't want to reveal the secret of another will to the executor mentioned in the old one." "You mean Mr. Topham?" I agree, the lawyer replied. "The new will may name someone else as executor," he smiled. "I think you and I should try to see this will. But," he added, "with Merchants Trust Company, which Merchants Trust Company is it in? There must be dozens of banks by that name." Nancy suddenly snapped her fingers. "Dad, I believe I know. You recall that Judge Hart and his wife told me that they seen Josiah Crowley in Masonville a couple of times, and there's a Merchants Trust Company there." Mr. Drew looked at his daughter admiringly. "I believe you have the answer, Nancy, and Judge Hart is just the man to help us. I'll phone him in the morning." "Well, I guess we both need some sleep." As the lawyer kissed his daughter goodnight, he added, "My dear, you were in serious danger when you encountered those thieves. I don't like to have you take such risks. I am very grateful indeed that you are back home safe. The Tophams aren't going to thank me when they find out what I have done," Nancy said as she went upstairs ahead of her father. "In fact, we may have a battle on our hands, Dad." "That's right, Nancy, and it will be just as well that they don't learn the details of how the will was found until the matter is settled beyond a doubt." "I'm certainly curious to find out if the new will left anything to the Tophams," said Nancy. "If not," her father put in, "your discovery will strike them at an especially awkward time." Nancy paused on the stairs and turned to face her father. "What do you mean?" "Well, there's talk about town that Richard Topham has been losing heavily in stock market this past month. He's been getting credit at a number of places on the strength of the inheritance that I suspect he is depending on Crowley's money to pull him through a tight spot. He's making every effort to speed up the settlement of the estate." "Then we better hurry," said Nancy, resuming the climb. "Don't build your hopes too high," Mr. Drew advised her wisely. "There may be a slip, you know." How? We may fail to find the will in the safe deposit box. Oh, I can't believe it, Dad. The notebook says it's there. Then the lawyer continued, there is a chance that Josiah Crowley didn't dispose of the fortune as the Turners and the Hoovers and others expected he would. But he promised all those people. I know, Nancy, but there's just the possibility that the notation in the notebook was a wishful thinking, and Mr. Crowley never got around to making the new will. You can discourage me all you want, Dad, but I'm not going to stop hoping, Nancy said. Oh, I can sincerely wait for morning to come. Scarcely wait for morning to come. Her father laughed. You're an incurable optimist. Now put Josiah Crowley out of your mind and get a good night's sleep. At the door of her bedroom, Nancy hesitated, then turned back toward the stairs. What's up? Mr. Drew asked. Without answering, Nancy ran down to the living room, picked up the notebook which lay on the table, and hurried back up to the carpet steps. After all I've gone through to get my hands on this, she told her father, I'm not going to take any chances, Nancy laughed. Tonight I'll sleep with it under my pillow. And that's the end of this chapter. So thank you for joining me. We only have a few chapters left and we'll finish this up next week. I hope you have a great weekend. Bye, friends.
Bye.
You want to say bye? Oh,
Bye.
come say bye.
Bye.
Bye, friends. Give him a kiss. Mwah.